My name is Kyle Groves. I am an EIT with ATG. Been here for a few years, coming up on my 2-year mark, about 3 more years of private industry experience before that, mostly solid waste and some residential and commercial development. And I'm very pleased to talk to you all today about one of the newer tools from CTC Software. It's called Data Wizard. Title of today's presentation is Using Data Wizard for More Efficient Plan Production in Civil 3D, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So, why are we here today? Well, I'm sure as I have been in my private life that a lot of you folks are pretty tired of your standard legend process. Maybe you got a block, maybe you put it together, but it needs to be verified against what actually exists in your plan set. You're tired of hunting through your project drawings and tediously organizing this pile of blocks, lines, and M-text. You're tired of accidentally forgetting to add something into your legend that was in your project. Or maybe you got a phone call from a contractor saying, hey, your legend says that we have fire hydrants, but there's no fire hydrants in your plans. What gives? Well, the solution to all of this is using Data Wizard from the Sim Project Suite. What this tool does is it scans your projects and updates based on filtering criteria. The results of using this tool can be used both for sheet legends and for QTO, although today we're going to look more specifically at legends and we'll do QTO in a different webinar. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start with the shortfalls in the out-of-the-box setup for doing this type of a task. We're going to talk about how Data Wizard addresses some of those shortfalls. And then we're going to hop into the software. I'm going to show you a workflow for using Data Wizard to create that legend for your project. So Civil 3D, as we all know, doesn't exactly install ready to go for you, for your firm, and for all the things that you're trying to do with it. Coming up with our quantities, coming up with our legends, it's hard. The QTO manager, it's not robust enough. Civil 3D tables are a place to start, but there's limited formatting. You can only put one object type per table, and if you did want to try and reformat or combine some things, you've got to explode it, and then you've lost your dynamic link, which was the benefit of that table in the first place. There's data extraction, but that's really optimized for AutoCAD objects, not Civil 3D ones. And property sets were introduced a few years ago, and those make this a little bit better, but it's still a headache of a process in a Civil 3D workflow. There's also no way inside of native Civil 3D to generate those legends or those graphics based off of all those symbols. You still have to insert that block or draw one of those lines in order for it to show up. So that's where data comes in. Data Wizard comes in. We want to use Data Wizard because our legends that come out of this include only the objects found by our filters. So when we say, I only want to see fire hydrants, I don't want to see anything from stormwater, it's not going to show you any stormwater. And every time you have more fire hydrants or different types of whatever it is you're looking for added, it's going to be able to pick up on that for you. You can do this at the level as narrow as an individual viewport or a whole layout. You can do it in one file and all of the XREFs that are inside that file, or you can do your entire project and you can create one table or multiple tables at any of these different levels. Data Wizard works with both AutoCAD and Civil 3D objects. Data Wizard has templates. This is going to allow your users to quickly reuse templates that may have already been set up for them or that they've set up before. Or if they need to make a slight modification, they can do that for their specific task without having to start over from scratch every time. And the big one here is there's no more standard legend that people have to work off of that needs to be organized or verified by hand. So with that being said, I could tell you about all these things that the tool does and where the buttons work, or we could just hop inside the software. I think we all know which one we would prefer. If I could just find it. So here we are inside Civil 3D. I've got my project. This was a survey specifically. We've got a client who has some property in this corner and over here on this lot. And we had to go out and grab all that different data. So with that, I finally processed all of my line work. I've got all my codes looking right. Everything's all hatched up, and it's time to deliver this back off to the client and off to the civil engineer so that they can do their design. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the Sim Project Suite ribbon inside Civil 3D. I'm going to go find my Data Wizard panel, and I'm going to start setting my legend up. And this is kind of the bread and butter here. If I had a template saved out, I could start from that. We'll go ahead and we'll run through and create it. But even through here in this drawing, we get to say, am I in one specific drawing? Is it the current drawing? And do I or don't I want to include the XREFs as part of that? For our layouts, I can limit it to a specific layout. So in this case, I have Site Plan 1 and Site Plan 2. Right now, I'm interested in Site Plan 1. But not only just the layout of Site Plan 1, I don't want all the viewports. I just want this one specific one. So I'll remove the existing and then go link up to that. If I wanted to do my entire project, this is where I could also say, include additional drawings. Go find all of my different base files with my corridor and my pipe networks and my geometry, all my demo plans. Go ahead and bring me everything in. And that's what this first page is. It's just about getting that high level information set up. Next, the question is, what am I interested in? What types of objects do I want to pull out and use in my project in this read of my project? So I mentioned we've got AutoCAD and Civil 3D. So that's 3D polys, regular polys, alignments, blocks, cogos, feature lines, survey points and survey figures, hatches, multi-leaders, parcel segments. This tool is still earlier in its development cycle. There's a lot more that CTC wants to do with this, including getting pipe networks and corridors built into this. It's not there yet, but as I think we will all find at the end of my presentation today, that is not an excuse not to use Data Wizard. It still does a ton of work for us that we don't want to do all by ourselves. So as I mentioned, this is a survey, so I'm going to be looking primarily at survey objects. But I don't know how many I've found, so that's why I need to hit the refresh button. And I can also see that my filter isn't set up because my filter matches my total on all three of these item types. So let's go ahead and see what it is we can do to kind of cut back on that a little bit. Well, in the filter tab, this is going to be the same window for everything, but since right now I'm trying to modify survey points, well, I don't have a hatch pattern associated with the survey point, so that's all grayed out. So this is going to be smart enough to understand what exactly it is you are or aren't looking for. And at this point, I'm going to actually pop out of Data Wizard and talk about how we can use our template to our advantage when we're setting up these projects and when we're setting up our CAD environment. So layer filters. Our meeting interaction isn't super great two-way right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and say, hey, who here uses layer filters? I'm going to assume that most people said, we use layer filters, and a few people don't. But when you're using layer filters, basically all you're doing is you're searching for a layer, and if you use asterisk something, or like SYMB asterisk, it'll only report the layers that include the characters that you just entered. So in this template, we've set it up in such a way that we've got our survey figures and our survey points split into two categories, plot and no plot. So all of our figures, all of our survey points that we want that are not going to plot, the description key set assigns them to a layer that has this node tag inside of it. All of the symbols or all of the survey points that we do want to plot have a layer with this SYMB or symbol plot associated with it. If I pop into model space real quick and thaw out some of those layers, those node layers, we can see that's all the basic X stuff. Hey, I got a ground shot. Hey, I got a bituminous shot. Not generating line work, and there's no fancy block associated with it. But by setting our template up this way, it's going to make it really easy for me to use Data Wizard to find those objects. So I'm going to go back into my legend. It remembers where I was at. I'm going to go in and I'm going to find my survey points, and I'm going to filter those to include the layer SYMB tag. now it's filtered that down so that there are only 25 survey points that have fallen on any layer with that criteria. For my survey figures, FIGR, that is the no plot layer, LINE is the plot layer, so I'm also going to include that, although not much is getting moved out from that. Hatches, not even going to bother because they're all there and they're what I'm looking for. So also notice too that we have the opportunity on this what are we looking for page of the dialog where you get to say, am I interested in objects that are on frozen layers or no plot layers? Off or locked? Well, in this case, I'm doing my printing legend, so I would not be interested in objects that are frozen. I would not be interested in objects that aren't supposed to plot. That's not going to affect me right now, but just want to point out some more of the flexibility that this tool allows. So page 2, it says, all right, we found 25 items, but what are those 25 items by the time we get to the third page? Well, I've got some trees, some signs, and a catch basin. But these trees are being duplicated. I'll show us how to figure, there is a way to fix that, and I'll show us how after a little bit. I want to get this table in first though. But we can also see our survey figures and our hatches. Buildings, concrete, curb, grass, all looks pretty great. But I've only said what objects I'm interested in. I haven't said anything yet about the data associated with those objects that I want. Well, that's what this page is for when we get to specify the data we're going to extract. Again, I want to kind of just spend a minute here explaining where and how this stuff is set up, because we're not going to get to everything today, but it's important that we know where it exists. So when I said at the beginning, Civil 3D doesn't have anything that will create your graphics for your legends for you. Well, that's why that's number 1 in this list. But we can also pull layers, layer description, raw description, just all this stuff. We can see that a lot of the area, length, count, this is all stuff that is going to be useful for either or the legend and the QTL. I do want to include the additional data in the custom description for the moment, because what this is going to do is this is going to say, you know, maybe I have a project that I'm working on and I didn't have time to set my template up beforehand. I didn't have time to add all of those fancy layer descriptions. I didn't have time to sort my COGO points into plotting layers and no plotting layers. I just need something that I want reported in my legend or in my QTO that's going to work for that. So that's what this custom description field is it's just the user define, deciduous. I can spell, I promise. And I'll just clipboard copy that and pop it into all of my different trees. This is a sign, and this is a catch basin. Same thing for my survey figures and my hatches, I could go through that. The other part, additional data. So I also mentioned AutoCAD, Civil 3D, like all these other different platforms in the Autodesk environment have these little nooks and crannies. So attributes. These are all of the fields inside of our block that we get to say, hey, you know, I've got 12 doors. Some of them are double doors. Some of them are single hinge doors. Some of them hinge left, hinge right. All that stuff that we can put in blocks, Data Wizard can find. Our user-defined properties. So when we have our survey figures, or our survey points rather, we're going out, we're shooting those catch basins. We want our measure down and our direction for those. We can include that as part of this as well. Object data. Now it's time to talk about Map 3D and all of the extra data that can be associated with those objects. Well, Data Wizard can find it. Property sets, kind of the +1 to attributes that can be assigned to most any AutoCAD or Civil 3D object. For example, this is a really common way to talk to Navisworks. So if you wanted to categorize your information or your stuff that way, you could add a property set to it, and that's visible to most Autodesk products. So this additional data helps us find more about what exactly it is we're looking to pull out of these objects. So I'm going to remove the additional data out of this table, but I'll leave that custom description in. And now we can move on. We've said, where am I looking? What am I looking for? Specifically with those objects, what is the data that I'm interested in for those objects in general? And now in this last page, we get to say, how is this all going to get put together and how is this all going to get spit out? Well, we can rearrange the order of these things by clicking and dragging around them. I can bring my hatches up front, or maybe I want my points first, whatever. So you can do that kind of manually down here, or you can run up to this data sorting button and you can sort your object groups. So you can sort those alphabetically or not. Within each different type, you can choose to sort its data differently. So you can sort it by the object or any of that stuff that we pulled out. So I'm going to sort these by custom description. We'll say OK. Capitalization, pretty straightforward. Which letters do we want capitalized where? And then for the graphics, cell size. So now we're getting into how big we want all these tables, all these cells to be. And with that, we have the opportunity to say, all right, well, big cells, little cells, some as big as your head. The graphic scale factors, I'm going to leave this at 1.3 right now, but this is how we talk to the source data for this particular object. So is my line type scale, is that 1 to 1? Is it 1 to 20? Whatever. I'm in layout or paper space. So I want this stuff to all be 1 because that's going to be read from the viewport. We do want to, in this case, include a legend title in our table. And that can be that. We also have the opportunity to add in other either subheaders or divisions within that table that we're going to report. And then once we've got this all set up, we can come down and we can specify whether or not we're going to do an AutoCAD table and or spit that out into an Excel file. So I mentioned, or have not yet mentioned, so these table styles, this is part of your AutoCAD template information. This is how that's all going to get set up and get put together. So you have to, again, work on that beforehand. But basically, I'm ready to create this table. And I drop it into my paper space. And I can see that a lot of that stuff that I specified was in there. I put my hatches on top. It got sorted with my hatches on top. I wanted to include my custom description. It included my custom description. And I can see the ways in which it was different than my primary. But this isn't exactly the legend I was looking for a couple of reasons. My trees are being reported with not a whole lot of extra information, but for some reason I have extras. And if I take this over to my model space and kind of hover over to check, I can see that my sign is a little bit bigger than what's being reported in plan view. And I can see that my catch basin is as well. Well, let's go back through and let's modify this table. The one thing that's going to be kind of different for users to understand is that with these tables, you're probably just better off deleting it than trying to go back through and update it, because the result's going to be the same anyway. And you have to set up your filters before you can apply them to your object. So let's go back and set that legend up. Notice that everything is going to be remembered from when I was back in here last. That's because this tool, all the CTC tools, write some data to the program data user preferences folder. So that's how a lot of this is getting called back to. But I want to keep most of this stuff the same. I'm still interested in all of those different types of objects, except I don't want to grab every single survey point that meets the criteria of being on my symbol layer. That's because I have multiple different trees with multiple different raw descriptions. That's why I'm getting those multi-reports. So this third column that I kind of skipped earlier for weeding duplicates, this is where I can come in and say, well, I don't want to duplicate my tree deciduous. I don't want to duplicate my catch basin, and I don't want to duplicate my sign. Standard code asterisk notation there. Now when I run that, I've been filtered down to just 3 items, which are my trees, my sign, and my catch basin. At this point, I'm also going to pull that custom description column out because I've got this set up with my layer descriptions to report accurately. And then I'm going to save this template for later use. Drop that table into my drawing. And now we can see that this is looking a lot cleaner. And my signs, oh, shoot, sorry. I forgot to change the graphic cell on that last page. Scale factor for the symbols to 1.0. Graphic scale factor set to 1.0. And now my signs are the size of a sign, and my catch basins are the size of the catch basin. So this is reading off that viewport, and it's getting those scales to match what your viewport says. So I've taken you all through a lot of setup before, or through now, and I really appreciate your patience, and you're sticking with me on this because now we're at the time for the payoff. So this is not just a dumb table. This is dynamic. This is going to read through the rest of my drawing. So when I make changes, and I update this table, that table is going to read through all of those filtering criteria, all of those filtered objects, and it is going to be able to figure that out for us. So for example, when I change my layer description for sign to sign, when I change my storm inlet to just a regular inlet, it'll pick up on that. Also too, oops, I forgot to include all of my data in my drawing. Let's go ahead and insert those fire hydrants that somehow got removed from my drawing previously. Let's go ahead and put those in here. And let's see how that works, because if I did this right, and I did, that description key puts those layers, or puts those symbols on the symbol layer, and that's what Data Wizard is looking for. So now I can take this table. I don't even have to go find I don't have to go back through and set it up. I just need to update it. And it's going to read that table, and the template is using just that table. And now my project is updated. So this used to say storm inlet, this signs used to have an S, and now I've got my fire hydrant in here. So no more standard legend. I set up my filtering criteria. I tell my objects, or I tell my table what objects it's supposed to be reading off of, and it works. Really quickly, let's see how this template can be applied to another drawing. So I'm going to run the legend from template. I'm going to choose that one that I just saved a few minutes ago, and I'm going to just insert that here on this table. Well, this isn't quite right because this legend is using a template that was referencing a different viewport altogether. So really what I want this legend to do is I'm going to set this up, I'm going to load up that other one, and I'll make a few quick tweaks so that this should work appropriately for all of my legends. And I'm just going to remove that layout here. I'll change it to site plan 2. I'll go find this layout. And I need to filter some additional stuff. Stormwater manhole. I used the wrong code for that. We've got SDM as well as TRC. No matter. We'll just load up that other template and make those quick changes. And it's just that easy. Understanding what it is that we're looking at, adding in some appropriate filters, modifying those filters, and letting the tool do its job. I forgot what that one was, but I know the TRC. By weeding out the TRC, we should only see one of those instances inside the table. And if my memory was any better and I could remember what that symbol was, we would have filtered that out and it would have worked. So that is, in a nutshell, folks, how we can go through and set up Data Wizard to create our legends for us. And in summary, what did we learn today? We learned that Data Wizard allows us to have accurate, project-specific legends and takeoffs. I know we didn't talk about the takeoffs too much today, but that is going to be the subject of a future webinar. But with this tool, we get to remove the human error. Only objects found by our filters that we set up get included in the legend that we're creating. We can set up templates so that our users can use these things for instant results or to make the minor tweaks that may not have been included in the thought process of creating that template in the first place. And Data Wizard can be configured for your organization standards. There are certain things that are going to shake out that CTC and ATG are going to recommend for ways that you set up your environments, but this tool is flexible, and there have been some areas like the custom description in object to filter or data to extract that are going to make this tool more flexible for everybody right away out of the box, or for projects that maybe you didn't have quite that hand in setting up the way you wanted it to. So with that, I want to thank everybody for your time today and have a wonderful rest of your day. My name is Kyle Groves. I'm with ATG USA, and I'd like to open it up for questions if anyone has any. Feel free to unmute yourself and or type into the chat window. Michelle Sullivan want to know, will there be a video link for the session? Yes. This particular session will be uploaded to ATG's Vimeo page. So it's vimeo.com/ATGUSA. All of our webinars get thrown up to here. If you want, Michelle, send me an email and I can make sure you get that link directly. But vimeo.com/ATGUSA is where these all go. Feel free to share it. Other websites of interest that I definitely want to point folks out to, there is the CTC software website. This is where you can go to download a trial or work with your ATG sales representative to purchase some licenses for that. So not only can you come in here to download the trial, but all of the tools in the project suite, and then there's also a manager suite for CAD management. All of these tools have a quick video that describes how this tool works on a fundamental level. Data Wizards is 1 minute. And a quick blurb on how that all works. So definitely check that out. On YouTube, CTC has their own YouTube channel as well as ATG, where more information is going to keep coming at. For example, Brian Lewandowski, he's the civil project manager at CTC. He did an hour-long one on Data Wizard a couple of weeks ago, as well as Sheet Generator. So really great places to go to find more info on these tools, brief overviews all the way through multi-part, hour-long deep dives into how those all work. And then, of course, the user guide for these tools is very well written. I've had a hand in creating some of that documentation myself. And actually, Barb Piper is on the line joining in with the webinar today. And I want to give a shout out to Barb specifically because she works for a company called Bolton and Menk. And Bolton and Menk, this tool, Data Wizard, was a partnership with Bolton and Menk. And Ms. Piper had a lot to do with that. And what I wanted to share that for is because the CTC Express tools are tools that are sourced from the user base. So if you have an idea about a tool that doesn't exist, a problem that you have that you want to see CTC do something about, or if you have a feature request or maybe even a bug report for tools that are currently out, click on that support button inside the software when you're running the tool. It'll take you to their page, and if you are in the US, that email is going to come through to ATG. We'll make sure that that gets entered into CTC's case system so that they can take a look at that and get the feedback that they need to make these tools work great. And Barb was just saying in the chat window, working with CTC was really great in getting this tool put together. And I mentioned before, there are other things that we want to add to this tool that CTC plans on incorporating, like pipe networks, like corridors. It's in progress, but we're not going to get there, and these tools aren't going to work great for the user base unless people are submitting their feedback. The other thing through this dialogue in any of the tools, if you click on that help button, it is going to launch a PDF that is the user guide, and Data Wizard is like 4 or 5 pages of just, here's the button, here's what it does, here's how you can go through and manage that stuff. So with that, stick around again for any more questions being asked, and thank you so much everybody for your time and attention today. All right, so with that, I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm gonna go ahead and call the webinar. Anybody has any questions, please reach out to your ATG sales representative or feel free to get a hold of me, KGROVES@atgusa.com. Have a great day, everyone.